of Cycle Sisters. And Cycle Sisters is a registered charity which aims to inspire and enable Muslim women to cycle. We offer regular lead rides, well, we did before the lockdown, and we have 3 groups at the moment. So we have groups in Walthamstow, Chingford and Redbridge, and inshallah we're planning some new groups as well. All women are welcome on our rides, whether you're Muslim or not Muslim, and we do have a good number of non-Muslims who also come on our rides as well. So we decided to organise this call today because we're hearing that lots of people are interested in buying a bike at the moment, and it's really fantastic to hear that more and more people are wanting to buy a bike and to get cycling during this time. But we also know that it can be something that's quite challenging, and people have got lots of questions, ranging from how do you even go about starting to think about what bike you need, what's the difference between all the different sorts of bikes, how much you're going to have to spend, where do you even go and get a bike. So we're going to be covering these kind of questions in the session today, and also you'll have the chance to ask any specific questions that you have as well. So we have invited Sham, so Sham Vesamia, to join us for the session today. Sham is the owner of A&S Cycles, which is a bike shop in Hackney. It's actually, they've just moved to a new premises, and it's on the border of the Waltham Forest and Hackney. So it's accessible for lots of the people who are on the call today, if you haven't already heard about it. Sham has built a really fantastic community around her shop, and she's made it into a very accessible space for women in particular, and also for those who are less confident or newer to cycling, which is something that Cycle Sisters really supports and is really appreciative to see this happening. It's very inspiring to see a female Muslim bike shop owner as well, and I just want to really appreciate the time that Sham is taking out to do this session with us today, because she's incredibly busy. She's often not getting home till late in the evening, and she was just telling me before this call she hasn't had a day off for as long as she can remember. So thank you so much, Sham, for joining us. So I'll hand over to Sham now, and she's just going to give us a short introduction to the topic, and then we'll move into some questions.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Nice to see you all. Those of you that I can see, and nice to kind of be here and be invited from yourself, Sarah. Just a little bit of background about ourselves. We've been trading in the bike industry for 36 years. And, I come across a lot of women, a lot of beginners, that ask me a lot of questions from the minute they walk into the store. And it is mainly, what do I need when I'm buying a bike? All right. So, like I said, there's a lot of things that you can ask. There's a lot of reservations as to, and kind of anxiety that comes with it as well when buying a bike, but it's a big purchase. It doesn't matter what budget you've got, it doesn't matter whether you're starting at an entry price, or whether you're thinking of, buying something very expensive. The anxiety that comes with buying a bike sometimes is kind of very transparent in the customers that walk in. And it's our job to make sure that you get all the right information. So I think when you're buying a bike, the main things that you want to initially go in with is to kind of to make things easier for yourself. Explain to the salesperson exactly what it is that you want. So explain to them what you would be using the bike for. Explain to them what your budget is. Explain to them whether you want gears or a single speed bike, or you want a sportier bike, or you want something with suspension. The more information you give the salesperson, the more we can then provide the right information that tailors for your needs and your requirements, within your budget as well, and to give you the right products to get you, onto the roads successfully and begin cycling. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what we do here and what a lot of bike shops do. So I think when looking for a bike, somebody might come in and say to me, oh, I'm a complete beginner, I don't know what I'm looking for. So I would say, okay, firstly, I need to determine your size. So I need to determine your height. So dependent on your inside leg measurement, I can straight away determine that you might be a size 17 frame, or you could actually jump onto a 19 frame, and we can lower the saddle and heighten the handlebars. And you might actually find that you're actually a lot more comfortable on a taller frame, even though you thought, oh, my height might not actually accommodate it. So it's all about trying the bike as well, and jumping on trying a few sizes. So sometimes, you know, a lot of people make the mistake of saying, you know, looking online, looking at size charts and saying my height requires this size frame. Actually, you might be very surprised. You know, we might sit you on a different type of bike altogether with a different type of geometry, which then will say that actually you actually, you know, are more suited to maybe a bigger frame. A lot of mistakes that people make is that they go for a smaller frame, and hence they would look like, you know, on. Again, that comes down to asking the right questions when you're buying a bike, especially if you're not going into a store. If you're not going into a store, and then you're asking by, you know, you're inquiring by phone or by email, then you need to make sure that you've given them all the information to make sure that you're being given the right product for your height as well. So height is a main one when it comes to choosing a frame, you know, for your requirements. I think the other big thing is budget as well. So a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that we need to spend X amount of money to get a very good, robust, good quality bike. Actually, it's the other way around. You know, it doesn't really make too much of a difference. A lot of the bikes that are now on the market, online or be it kind of in store, are very, very well made, very robust. And a lot of the entry bikes are made for beginners so that you can afford to buy an affordable bike, get on the road, practice, and maybe in a few years' time upgrade as well. So you don't need to be spending 500, 600 pounds. You can actually get a perfectly suited, fully equipped, you know, kitted out bike with a mudguards rack, you know, a basket maybe, or, you know, also incorporated into your budget, starting at around 250. So 250 pounds would probably be the best starting point to get a good quality bike. The minute you start buying something lower than that, possibly 199, you're compromising on the components slightly, and that bike will not last you more than 12 months before you start spending and maintaining that bike more frequently, and your costs will start going higher and higher and higher before you kind of realize that this bike is actually going to last me a couple of years. Whereas if you just spent 50 pounds to 100 pounds more, you would probably get this particular bike to last you probably 5 years to 6 years. So budget is not so much of a big issue to be thinking that I need to buy an expensive bike, but you need to be looking at the components mainly. So like I said, going back to what I just said, a lot of the manufacturers are now using like for like components. So you mustn't worry too much about branded components like Shimano and SRAM. You know, there are other components that are just as good, you know, that will work just as well and last you just the same length of time. So I think that's kind of another thing that you could be looking out for. The other types of things that you need to look out for when buying a bike is you know, what is it that you're going to be using it for? So are you going to be using it for a leisurely ride? Are you going to be using it to commute? Are you going to be using it for family riding? So all these things come in, you know, play a factor in choosing a bike. For instance, if you're a mum or a dad and you want to put a child seat on the back of the bike or at the front of the bike, then it's probably best that you have a few gears on there, and it's more kind of sustainable and more kind of more practical. Than you know, probably choosing something like a single speed bike, which I wouldn't recommend to put a child seat on. So you need to be asking the right questions, or giving whoever you're buying the bike from as much information about what your needs are, you know, so that would be kind of another way forward. You know, there's different types of bikes. You know, there's single speed, there's mountain bikes, and there's hybrid bikes. So again, it just depends on what your needs are. With regards to commuting, it's always good to have a bike with a rack on there, with mudguards already kind of on there. Otherwise, your price is going to be bumped up. Kind of in a few months down the line. So if you buy a bike in the summer without mudguards, without a rack, then in the winter you'll be adding your cost to that bike as well. So you'll probably be adding about another £100 onto your cost. So it's always good to think of a budget. So if you think of a budget, say £350 should get you a good, robust bike with everything inclusive in that price, so that you're not adding anything else on there as an extra afterwards. Another thing that that you need to think about is maintenance of the bike as well. So for instance, if you buy a new bike, what are your maintenance costs going to be? So this is dependent on how frequently you ride. So if you're riding once a week, you know, maybe twice a week, then you're not going to wear your parts out as quickly as you would if you were riding every day to work. So if you were riding every day to work, the most common parts that will get worn, like a pair of shoes, is your chain and your cassette. And then that would cost you the best part of £100 every 9 months with the parts and the labour to get that kind of maintained or replaced. So you need to think about maintenance as well. So a good kind of low maintenance bike would be a single speed bike, because you don't have any gears on there, it's fixed. So if somebody was looking for a bike that's lightweight, that will just get them from, you know, locally to do the shopping, or even to just get on the roads and go to work, you know, in short distance, then a single speed bike is probably suited for somebody who doesn't want to pay, or doesn't want to keep wants to keep their costs low, with regards to maintenance. So that's kind of a good option to choose. A lot of men go for single speed bikes because they're very fast, they're very smooth, and they have the road tyres, they're very thin road tyres. So sometimes for women, it's not practical to go for this type of bike. It's probably better suited for women to go for a geared bike. Not all women, but the majority of us prefer gears because it gives us that flexibility and movement, and you know, practically it makes it a lot easier for us as well. Especially if you've got a child seat at the back or a trailer, then you've got, you know, you've got that assistance there to help you on any type of terrain. You know, you might be going down a canal route, bumpy hilly roads, or through the park. So possibly that's a good one to I think when buying a bike for the first time, I would always recommend a bike with gears if you're not used to riding a bike. So that's kind of another option there for you. I think when buying a bike, that it's always good to go into a local independent or even a high street bike shop, you know, and try and go to one that's been around for a good few years. They would try and give you, hopefully, they would, fingers crossed, they would give you the right advice that is tailored to your needs. But I think a face-to-face discussion is always better than trying to buy a bike online or by email or by phone, you know, telephone order. I think that way you're getting a personal service. You get to know the person that's selling you the bike, and you kind of feel a bit, you're putting your trust in them. You know, a bike isn't a small purchase. You know, a bike is a form of transport. You're on the road, so you need to be able to trust them to buy that bike. You need to be able to trust them to give them your custom, but you need to be able to trust them to bring that bike back to them, to maintain it and look after your brakes and look after your gears, and, you know, maintain the lifespan of that bike, because that purchase, be it a £200 bike or a £1,000 bike, it doesn't actually matter. It's a form of transport and it has to be safe. All right, so I think, you know, it's very, very important that you possibly go into a store. You know, I couldn't stress that more, you know, and hopefully you get the right advice as well. The other thing to look out for, or to ask when you're purchasing a bike, is to ask to test ride it. A lot of the shops, unfortunately, are very reluctant to give somebody a test ride. But if you don't test ride it, how do you know that you're going to feel comfortable on it? You know, how do you know that you're able to use the gears? How do you know that, you know, the saddle is comfortable for you? So it's always good to make sure that you're asking the right questions, and obviously take a test ride if that's kind of accommodated for you. Another thing that people look for when buying a bike is the option of buying a second-hand bike. I think with second-hand bikes, it's a bit of a tricky one. You know, if you don't have a trained eye, you could buy a bike that cosmetically looks okay. You know, the gear cables might be looking okay, the brake cables might be looking okay. But actually, when you get down to the nitty and gritty, and we find this a lot in the shops, where somebody has purchased a bargain bike that looks amazing, you know, kind of a very kind of a vintage type, you know, which is in fashion at the moment, type of bike. And they'll come into the store and they'll say, I've just bought a bike for £100. Could you give it a health check and give it a once over, give it a service, and then I'm good to go. And unfortunately, a lot of the time what we find is once we put it in our workshop and on our vice, a lot of the parts are worn. And in fact, it could take at least another £150 to £250 to repair that bike. So you need to be asking the right questions when you go to purchase a second-hand bike. You need to be asking things like the service history. Do you have a receipt, you know, of the service history? When's the last time you had the service and what was done? Another thing to look out for with second-hand bikes is that a lot of them are stolen. So you need to find out whether this bike has been registered with the police or on some kind of data system where you can track it to make sure that you're not buying a stolen bike, because that bike could be actually, you know, eventually taken off you if it's recovered again by the original owner. Where to buy a second-hand bike? I would recommend just going into a bike shop. I wouldn't recommend going on Gumtree, Facebook, or Brick Lane Market, which is, you know, a common one. But I would say go into a specialist second-hand bike store that refurbishes second-hand bikes, that use the right components to rebuild this bike, to make sure that you've got a bike that's fully functioning and won't fall apart on you within 2-3 months, if that. I think also when buying a bike, you kind of miss out on a personal touch when you're buying online. You know, it goes back to what I just said about going into a shop and talking to somebody face to face. It's always better doing it this way, because your needs and your requirements relate to the salesperson. And sometimes, you know, don't be hesitant. Go back 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, if be it. You know, if you feel confident, then no bike shop should be turning their nose up at you. Thinking that you're actually wasting their time. I actually spend, you know, in our store, we spend at least 2-3 visits, you know, with the customer, just to make sure that every requirement is noted, and then we'll go through the options of a hybrid, a single speed, you know, a child seat, geared bike, budget, you know. So we go through absolutely everything. So don't ever shy away from going into a store, you know, and asking the questions, and then, you know, it's your privilege and preference to go home and digest that info and go back and ask the right questions and keep going back until you think that you've got the right purchase for yourself. So I think it's very important that you don't rush, you know, your purchase of buying a new bike. I think that's quite key, and you know, quite a common mistake that some people make, is that they make an impulse buy because they're so excited, quite rightly, to buy a bike. But it's always good to kind of take your time, you know, and, you know, rather than, you know, go home with a bike that then actually turns out that it's not practical for you at all. So I think, I'm not quite sure if there's anything else that I need to cover, but I think the main ones are the frame size. I think actually another one that I've actually forgotten to mention is how heavy the bike's going to be. So take into account whether you're going to be lifting the bike up the stairs or down a basement, you know, set of stairs, whether you live in a flat, you know, whether you're going to be taking it into the house, you know, to the back of the garden. So take into consideration the weight of the bike. Now, a good weight of the bike would be something like 12 kg. So somebody, you know, kind of probably are going to laugh, but if we say, you know, somebody who's in a height frame of 5'4" to 5'10", could manage a weight frame of, say, 14 kilograms to 16 kilograms, and that's quite a hefty weight, you know, for somebody who's petite. So somebody who's kind of 5'1" will not be able to manage that height-wise, you know, weight-wise. So, excuse me. So a good weight, kind of to start off with, or to look for in a bike would be between 12.5 kg and 14 kg. The minute you go above that, you're going to come across problems depending on your height and how you can manage that and where you're lifting. I think that's an important one, to make sure that you're getting the right type of weight of frame. I think another one to look out for is when you're considering weight of the frame, is whether it's alloy or steel. So going back to your budget and going back to the weight, the alloy ones will be a lot more expensive. The steel ones will be a little bit more kind of reasonably priced. So depending on your needs and your budget, you then decide whether you want to go and pay that little bit extra for an alloy frame, or whether you're actually okay with a 12 kilogram bike, and then you can manage it and it's absolutely fine within your needs and within your budget. So I think weight is actually quite key in when you're choosing the bike as well. So weight, whether it's alloy or steel, the style of bike, so whether you're sitting upright, excuse me, got a bit of a dry cough. Whether you want to be sat upright in a comfortable ride, or whether you want to go for a more sportier hybrid where you're kind of slightly arched and kind of slightly bent in your posture as well. Excuse me. I think also going to a good bike store, set your budget, incorporate your excuse me, I just think I need a glass of water. Can you excuse me for one moment? Is that all right?
That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go and get some water.
Okay, don't worry. I'm not, yeah.
Huh?
I've got it, don't worry. Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to take a minute, or are you okay? Okay, so in a minute we're going to move to a Q&A. So if everyone can just start thinking of any questions that you've got, and then we'll be able to ask Sham in a second.
Yeah. I'm okay, Sarah.
Carry on, or do you want me to move
I'm
to...
just going to finish off because I've missed out one key thing as well. So we've kind of said the frame and the weight, the price, you know, the budget, the size of the frame and the style of the frame. Another thing that you need to be kind of aware of is when you're purchasing a bike, try and get the bike purchased fully assembled. When you get a bike in a box, there's a lot of work involved. A lot of the online companies will say to you that they're 80% built. In fact, when we build a bike from a box, we start from scratch. We look for faults. We do a health and safety check. We also tune and index the gears, which is key to your gears working efficiently. And if you've built the bike yourself and you don't have the knowledge of how to tune your gears, then your bike is not going to work effectively, and you're going to shorten the lifespan of your bike. So that again is key as well. And then choose a good independent or high street store that will give you the time that you need to purchase that bike. All right. Okay, Sarah, I'll give it to you.
Brilliant. That's fantastic, Sham. There was so many amazing tips and useful information packed in there, so thank you. So before we jump into other people asking questions, there was one thing that came up as a very common question from the ones that were submitted in advance, was about knowing the difference between the different options of bikes, the different types of bikes. So do you think you could just talk through the main differences between the most common types, so say like a mountain bike, a hybrid and a road bike, so people could understand what kind of different uses they might have?
Yeah, so hybrid, it's quite versatile. You've got the gears on there, you usually have the rack and the mudguards on there, and that's kind of an all-rounder commuting bike, but also an all-rounder kind of local kind of shopping. Very, very easy to ride a hybrid bike, but it gives you the flexibility of different terrains, if that makes sense. So it's in between a mountain bike and you know, like I said, a geared bike. So you can do both, you know, park rides, road rides. You can go, you know, commute on it, go to work, do the shopping trips. So for me personally, I would always recommend a hybrid. With regards to mountain bikes, you know, you've got the suspension on there, you know, you can have some technical bits on there as well, which I won't go into too much, but it's more for the outdoor person. It's more for the, you know, the rough and tumble, you know, if you've got children that like to go into the park on hilly grounds, you know, you want to go fast and, you know, you're going to go on to kind of pebbly ground, then it's a very robust kind of wider tired, you know, your tires are wider, your tread is thicker, and it will hold that weight and it will hold that force that you're going to put behind it. Again, that's more of a, children tend to have a lot of mountain bikes because they're very, you know, you know, the rough and tumble, and they like to play. So that's kind of the, you know, the mountain bike side of things. You can go for a single speed bike, which is low maintenance. There's no gears on there. You can have it fixed and set on one gear. Very lightweight, low maintenance, no nonsense, flat road kind of riding. So, I mean, those are your three main bikes. You've got electric bikes as well. With electric bikes, I think there's a certain level of fitness that's needed with that as well. I mean, it's pedal assisted, so it's doing all the work for you. It's assisting you to get to your destination in a shorter time. So electric bikes are kind of on the rise. But one thing about electric bikes is that the battery, if the battery needs repairing, it could cost as much as the bike itself. and a lot of people don't know this. So if you purchased a good kind of entry-level electric bike for £599, and for some reason you can't fix that battery and something goes terribly wrong with it, that battery could cost you as much as £350 to replace. So you need to look for a good brand, something like Bosch, you know, Yamaha. Those are probably the best two when considering an electric bike. So I think the most common bikes that are sold is a hybrid, you know, and then you're kind of moving into a single speed frame, and then you're kind of moving into your mountain bike, and you're kind of looking at bikes now. So that's kind of covering those type of bikes. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Sham. Okay, so we'll move into Q&A now. So I'm going to start with Tahmina, who's put a question in the chat. If we can unmute Tahmina so you can ask your question. And anybody else who's got a question, either post it in the chat to let us know that you've got a question, or you can raise your hand and we'll come to you shortly. So Tahmina, if we can unmute you. Okay.
Thank you for that. That was very helpful. I didn't catch where your shop was, so I'm looking to get a touring bike at the moment. So yeah, so I was just wondering if you sold touring bikes and your shop's
the touring bike, we do. The shop's located just off the top end of Leabridge Road, where the roundabout is, and then it joins Lower Clapton Road. So we're just on that main road. And with regards to touring bikes, we've actually sold out at the moment with everything going on. But we do touring bikes, and they start at £280 upwards in a different kind of range of colours, different brands. So I think the best way forward would be just to come in, you know, probably come and see me, and then I'll discuss the requirements with you. Yeah.
Okay, great. And so what was your shop's name?
Excuse me, it's A&S Cycles.
Okay, great. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Well, great. Thanks for that question, Tahmina. Okay, so we'll go to Seema, who's got a question about kids' bikes.
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. Just wondering, I've got a 14-year-old daughter who's, I don't know if I should be looking for an adult bike for her or a large children's bike for her. What would you recommend?
Seema, you just, sorry to interrupt, you just broke up, so I didn't quite get the first part of your question.
Okay, so I've got a 14-year-old, and I'm not sure if I should be looking for a large kids bike or a small adult's bike. What would be best for her? Because I want it to last some time. Okay.
Yeah, I think with a 14-year-old, you're moving into a small frame adult's bike now, just so that we can make use of a lot of years now with that bike purchase. So it is dependent on her inside leg measurements. But when you're hitting 14, you know, children's bikes only go up to a 24-inch wheel. Then you're hitting a 26-inch wheel in smaller frame sizes, like a 13 frame or a 15 frame or a 16 frame. So dependent on her height, I would have recommended a small ladies frame now. So probably a 26-inch wheel, or even a 700C wheel, but in a smaller frame, something like a 16 frame, possibly even a 15 frame. So you're now actually moving out completely away from children's frames, and you need to start looking at small ladies adult frames. Did that help? Yeah.
Does that answer your question, Seema?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Brilliant. All right. Does anyone else have a question? You can just put your hand up or do a reaction, the hand up reaction. Yes, Medina, if we can unmute Medina, and we'll come to Samia next. Can we unmute Medina? Is it
unmute? That's it. Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome, Slam.
I didn't realise you're so local. I'm literally the other side of the roundabout. I'm behind the pond. I'm literally the pond, and
I'm just in front of the pond. Yeah.
I'm desperate to come to see you. Then now, where are you open? Okay. First of all,
we're definitely open.
Okay, and
I didn't quite get the last part. Yeah.
And what are your hours?
Okay, I'm still kind of getting a glitch on the sound a little bit, but we're definitely open.
Okay.
Our normal hours are going to be 8:30 till 7 o'clock, Monday to Sunday. However, due to the COVID, obviously, you know, there's a few staff shortages. I've got a couple of mechanics on lockdown in Spain. So we're doing appointment-only system at the moment, but the doors are open and people are knocking and we are letting them in 2 at a time. So the hours at the moment have been shortened to 10 o'clock till 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. For the time being, but all the hours are updated on Google. But like I said, we are saying appointment only, but our doors are actually open. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Inshallah. And what's might as well get your number while you're here so I can call.
All right. I'll get Sarah to pass it on to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
If Ruqayya or Seema, if one of you wouldn't mind just looking up A&S details and posting it on the chat for us, that'd be great. Thank you, Medina, for your question. We'll go on to Samia next, please, if we can unmute Samia.
Assalamualaikum. Can you hear me?
Walaikum salam. Yes,
yes,
you can.
Oh, I can't hear you. 1 second. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
I can hear you too. Jazakallah khair for that. That was really informative. I just wanted to ask if your shop sold second-hand bikes, and if not, then what kind of budget are we looking at? Price range? Would you say in this current climate?
All right.
Good second-hand bike be compared to a new
Okay, Assalamualaikum. Okay, I've actually decided to stop selling second-hand bikes because some of the frames that come into us that we buy have a lot of damage to them. Sometimes this damage is invisible to the eye on first look. So when we put it on the stand, some of them have cracks in the frame, which is basically a write-off. So I've actually decided not to sell second-hand bikes anymore. Also, sourcing the parts can be quite problematic. So going back to your question, we sell and stock a range of bikes from £199 upwards to suit any needs, any requirements, any budget. So 199 can go up to anything. And within that range, you will find a hybrid bike with gears. You will find a ladies' bike with a basket, mudguards and a rack. You will find a mountain bike. You will find a single speed bike. So kind of an entry price for a brand new bike at our store would be £200. But for, if you wanted exclusive of the 3 parts I just mentioned, the rack, the basket and the rack, then you're looking at £220 upwards.
Okay. Thank you for that answer.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you for that, Samia. So I think Lena, did you have your hand up? Yes. Okay. Yeah. If we can unmute Lena, please. One sec. You're not quite unmuted yet.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
I have 2 questions. The first question is, do you offer payment plan installments?
Okay, with regards to that, we just tailor anybody that comes in, we just tailor to their needs. So yes, we do. So we get asked this question very frequently. We're quite flexible actually at A&S. So, whatever the customer wants to pay and which way they want to pay, we accommodate it.
Okay, thank you. And
okay.
What do your price ranges, what does it start from the lower end to the middle end? What's the range?
So the range starts from £200 upwards for an adult bike. I don't do anything lower than that, apart from a few of the small children's frames. So I'm saying children's, but it goes back to the other question that I answered. It's small adult frames for children above the age of 13. They would start at 175 and upwards. I don't think I would go anything lower than that, because then I would be compromising on the quality of the bike that's being brought into my store. So they range from £200 and they can range up to anything, 600, 800, 2,000. So it just depends on your requirements. Yeah.
And my last question is, do you have any tips or any advice or suggestions on in terms of after you've made the purchase, what can cyclists do in terms of protecting the bicycle from theft or vandalism?
Yeah, I think that's the key question, and you know, something that a lot of people when buying a bike actually forget about locks, and it's something that we point out more or less, you know, from the beginning, is that incorporate some of your budget into a good quality lock. But that's actually, you know, we say that, but that's actually then, you know, we follow that up with a few questions like, where do you lock your bike up? Is it secure? Do you take it inside? Is it in a secure lock-up unit at work? Because these factors will then take into consideration how much of that budget you're actually spending on lock. So if you are taking it home and you are locking it up indoors and you're not leaving it outside, you know, at all, let's say, then you don't need to be spending you know, on a very, very robust, expensive lock. You can go for a mid-range lock that probably starts at £22, £25. But then if you say to me that, yeah, I'm going to be leaving it outside my front garden overnight, you know, or I don't have a secure unit at work and I'll be leaving it outside the tube station, you know, for the full part of the day whilst I'm at work and then going back to my bike, then I would say you need a good kind of level, kind of robust lock, something like a kryptonite, which has levels. So you would have levels, say 1 to 12. The higher the level, the more robust the component, and the more difficult for the, you know, for the thief to break into. So, you know, a good lock would probably start at around £35, dependent on where you're going to be locking it. If you take it inside, you don't need to be spending that much. A £20 D lock is sufficient, you know, for something like that. So again, it boils down to how practical your needs are. With regards to locks as well, that's actually a good subject to touch on. I would steer clear away from cables or chains. They are very, very easily cut. So always try and look for a D lock, and try not to go for a mini lock either. Try and go for a longer length D lock, where you have the scope then to lock one of your wheels with your frame onto a post. That way you've locked your wheel and your frames and you've made it secure. Additional to that, buy a cable and loop the cable through your back wheel or your front wheel, whichever one you're doing, and that way you've secured both your wheels. Okay, so I think, again, incorporate your budget. You know, whatever your total budget is for your bike, say it's £300, then secure and make sure that £40 or £20 of that budget is for your lock. I think with locks as well, you know, with theft, you know, especially on the rise with the current climate as well, I think sometimes it's good to put an additional lock on because it becomes a visual kind of deterrent. You know, if the thief is walking past your bike and sees 2 locks, he's going to unfortunately move on to another bike because it's going to take him longer to cut through 2 locks than 1 lock. So sometimes even getting a cheaper lock as a backup and just locking it just for the sake of it will secure your bike, you know, and hopefully keep it safe. Yeah.
Okay. Does that answer your questions, Lena? Thank you very much for those. Just on the topic of paying for bikes, Sham, does A&S Cycles do the Cycle to Work scheme?
Yeah, we were registered with the work scheme, but I actually closed it in December when I closed the. So at the moment we're not linked, but we're in the process of doing this. So I think it might take a couple of months with the delays with everything going on, maybe a bit sooner, but we'll definitely be back up and running with that.
Could you just briefly just explain how it works and what the scheme is?
Well, it's a scheme where your employer will fund the bike initially, and then, you know, it's taken out of, I think it's your gross wages, so it will be taken out in installments through your wages, and you know, the whole idea is that you save about 40% on the purchase of a bike and accessories. So if you were to go on the scheme and buy £1,000 worth of goods, you would actually save 30 to 40% on that price, that total budget on them goods, depending on what scheme your employer is with. So you need to ensure that your employer is firstly registered with the scheme. Then you have to approach your employer, set yourself up with the employer, and then the rest is usually done automatically. They would give you a form, you would bring it into the store, and it's you know, it's basically exchanging a document or a form, and then you're given the goods, and then the payment is automatically kind of done kind of behind the scenes. So it's pretty simple, I think. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. All right, thanks for that, Sham. Okay, we've got a question from Shabina. we can unmute Shabina, please. Yep, go ahead, Shabina.
Thank you, that's been really helpful. I'm sure, like lots of other people, I'm also thinking about commuting into work, so by bike. And I guess I'm just wondering what sort of bike would be good, whether it would be a road bike or whether some sort of hybrid. I kind of think the hybrid bike, it's on quite a kind of large spectrum, so it can be quite mountain bikey, and then you find ones that are quite road bike almost. So I'm just wondering whether it would be better to get a road bike or a hybrid of some sort.
I think yeah, I think for commuting, I would always recommend a hybrid. I wouldn't recommend a road bike, especially the ones with the racing handles. I don't think that's suited for commuting, unless you've rode a road bike and you're confident riding a road bike, because the brakes can be at a different point on your handlebars as well. And if you're not used to that posture as well, you know, you've got quite busy London roads when you're commuting, and it could become quite problematic when you're jumping on and off at the traffic lights, or stopping and getting back on. So I think for comfort, for flexibility, and for quite a kind of secure ride, because often your commute is going to be more than 30 minutes either way, then a hybrid is probably the only option that I would recommend for commuting. It's solid, it's secure, you know, it's robust enough as well, and it gives you that flexibility, exactly as you just said, to be able to do family rides afterwards as well, to be able to go into the park as well. But it's kind of it will get you from A to wherever you need to go, you know, and it's reliable basically. Your posture is going to be correct on there as well. Like I said, especially if you're not used to commuting, I think one of the main kind of safety issues that I come across when people are thinking of commuting, especially with the COVID situation going on, we've had a lot of inquiries, you know, from people who have never, you know, rode a bike to work, and they're not used to the roads, is the getting on and getting off and stopping at the traffic lights. Now, if you're not comfortable doing this, then the wrong type of bike for that terrain is not going to do you any favors. So you need to be comfortable. So a hybrid bike is going to, you know, adjusted, you know, you adjust your seat to the right height, adjust your handlebars to the right height. You've got the gears, you know, and then you're jumping on and off is correct as well. And I think it's just a more reliable type of bike for that type of riding.
Thank you.
That's all right.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you for that, Shabina. There's just been another question, Sham, which is if someone did decide to buy a bike online, how would they go about figuring out what the right size of the bike would be for them?
Again, a lot of online stores have a size chart, but I wouldn't hold that as gospel. Size charts are kind of linked with the, you know, with height. You know, you can have a tall person with a very short inside leg and a longer torso, or you can have it the other way around. So it's dependent on the inside leg measurements. Also, you know, you can have two bikes that are claiming to be, let's just make something up, 52 centimeters, different brands. You have one bike that's 52 centimeters on the left, you have one bike that's 52 centimeters on the right, but the geometry would be different also. So, you know, the one on the right might have a longer frame, where the reach will be a lot longer as well. Whereas the one on the other side might be a shorter frame, but still 52 centimeters. So it's a bit difficult when you're buying online. I think most of the time they get it right, but I think the best way, or the only way to determine your size when buying a bike online, is to measure your inside leg measurement and correspond that with the size chart that's on that online website. So I think maybe not rely too much on the height advice that's given on there. you know, just rely on your inside leg measurement, and you would know straight away if that frame size is correct for you. All right.
Great, thank you. Another question as well that came in on the chat, and is linked to something I was also going to ask, is so roughly how much would you need to expect to spend on servicing a bike once you purchased it? How often should you do that? And then the particular question was, do you have any more information about the scheme that the government has announced where they're going to be giving £50 maintenance vouchers out?
Okay, well, the first question, how much would you be spending on maintenance, is dependent again on how frequently you ride. A bike is like, wearing out a pair of shoes. So once your shoes are worn or your sole is worn, you would replace it. However, if you look after your shoes, you know, give it a bit of a leather shine, or, you know, take it to the shoe repairs, you know, it'll kind of extend the lifespan on your bike. So depending on how frequently you ride, you should try and get your bike serviced at least every 9 to 12 months. Most likely, if you ride every day or commute, the main parts that will get worn and that will cost you probably the most would be your cassette and your chain, and your gears will need servicing. If you kind of ride less frequently, you may not need a service at 9 months, but you may need it at 12 months, just like an MOT on a car. And cost-wise, it's dependent on the bike store. You know, we charge £30 for a basic service. Other stores might charge £20. Other stores might charge £45. So it's just dependent. I think the key factor is, when maintaining your bike, is knowing which parts to look at, you know, and identifying the parts that you think are kind of giving you a warning signal that you know, they're starting to show signs of wear, i.e. your brake pads, your cables. If your brake pads are starting to scuff like a shoe, then, you know, it's time to replace your brake pads. If your cables are fraying, you know, or they're twisted, you know, or there's a crack in them, then your cables need replacing. If your gears are making a noise, you know, then your chain and cassette needs replacing. You know, it could be a number of issues, you know, but it's knowing and identifying little sounds, you know, that you think, oh, you know, why is my bike doing this? Rather than ignore it, take it to a bike shop and get it looked at. You know, otherwise your cost might build up, you know, in 12 months' time. So it's about maintaining and looking after your parts on your bike. So key is to look after the small parts initially, your brake pads, your cables, you know, mainly your cables and your brake pads. And then in 12 months' time, get your chain and your cassette looked at if you've got a geared bike. And I think, Sarah, finally, your question was about the £50 government scheme. I don't think I've heard of that one yet. So if you just refresh me what the scheme is.
Yeah,
maybe
I think
it's
only recently been announced. It was maybe about 4 or 5 days ago. So they're planning to give out some vouchers, like maintenance vouchers, for a value of £50. But I haven't seen any more detail on it yet, so I'm not sure whether it's any more details.
I think I've been that flat out. Yeah, I've been quite busy at the shop. Maybe I've missed that one, so I'll look into it and see what that's about. Yeah.
Brilliant. All right. So we've got a question from Jibril about cycling with children. So can we unmute Jibril?
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
I can ride confidently, but I've never ridden with my children, and I've never bought a bike. I've always borrowed a bike. I'm looking to ride to my local forest with my children and then see if we can sort of start going further out. What would you recommend? I would be carrying my special need year-old on my bike.
Okay. Sorry, can you just repeat what age your child is?
So he's 3, but then I have 3 other children who are 6 to 11.
Okay, so with regards to the older children, obviously you can't have them now on your bike. They're older and more heavier, and it's not suited to have them on the bicycle. Sorry, I'm just breaking up slightly.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, they would be on their own bikes. I would carry my...
Right. So so the 3-year-old, I would recommend that you put the 3-year-old now on a child seat on the back of a bike, not the front. And I think what you need to look for, or if you don't have, I always tend to recommend a rack-mounted child seat, only because it has a lot more has a little bit more foundation, a bit more support underneath the seat. Whereas the other style of seat is the one that fits on a bracket, and the bracket is attached to the frame, and then the two arms are then linked into the seat, and then the seat is suspended over the tyres. And there's a little bit of a bounce with that as well. Not necessarily, it doesn't mean that it's not safe. I mean, they're all tested and they've been going on for years. But my preference is to put the child seat onto a rack, and it's quick release as well. It just gives it, a little bit more added support as well. I think if you haven't rode with your child on the back of a bicycle, I don't think it's anything to be anxious about. I think you'll actually find that you'll love it, and I think your son would love it. Would absolutely love it as well, especially the wind, in the park, and kind of breezing through it. I think it's about confidence. So I think when you first attempt to ride with your child on the back of a seat, I think the key thing is to go into the park, with your husband or your family, and do a practice run. Get comfortable with the weight at the back of your bike, and get comfortable knowing that your son is comfortable as well. And I think, like I said, I think it's nothing to be anxious about. In fact, enjoy it, whilst you can, because he'll soon be on a bike independently. And these are moments that you treasure with your children. So I think the quicker you get on it, the better. But like I said, I don't think you've got anything to worry about. I think you sound like you're a cyclist and you've rode before. So I think it's just a case of getting the right child seat, and possibly get one that fits on a rack as well. Yeah.
Brilliant. All right, thank you, Sham.
All right.
Also, just to let you know, Jabril, that Cycle Sisters did a Zoom session on different options for cycling with young kids a couple of weeks ago. So we covered a lot of things that Sham's been talking about, and also some few other options, so things like trailers and cargo bikes and things. So in a sec, I will try and post the link to that in the chat, so you can check that out as well. Okay, we've got a few minutes left, but I do want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to ask the questions that they've got. So we've got a question from Alicia, so if we can unmute Alicia, and if anyone else has got any last final questions, then do put up your hand or let me know that you'd like to ask. So we'll come to Emma after Alicia, but if we can go with Alicia.
Thank you, so helpful. I feel like you've saved me many hours on internet research and things like that, so thanks so much. I just wondered if you had any kind of just particular things that you'd advise people to look out for in terms of helmets, because I know there's lots of different ones around, and whether it's just more about kind of what you like, or whether there's kind of particular elements that it's worth considering.
Okay, I think with health, it's probably exactly what you've just said, and in a nutshell, probably all of it. So when you're buying a helmet, the first and foremost is that it fits you correctly. I've seen a lot of people that come in and look at the cosmetic side of helmets initially. I really like this. I have to have this one. It's the right shape and it's the right color. And it looks like a horse riding helmet. And then I say, right, let's try it on. You try it on, and then you kind of determine that their head shape is actually not suited to that helmet. So everybody comes in different shapes and sizes, including heads. You can have a long head, you can have a round head, you can have an oval head. But different helmet sizes and shapes will suit and fit differently on a different type of head. So you need to be trying on different styles. I think something like the BMX kind of skateboard style helmets, something like the Burn helmet, and something like a more kind of sportier kind of a commuting type helmet. You need to try different ones on to determine what shape suits your head. The minute you determine that shape, then you determine how it fits. The minute you determine how it fits, you determine your size. So size-wise, it's head circumference. All right. So usually helmets will come in small, medium, large, double XL, etc. But it's head circumference that you're looking at. When fitting a helmet on your head, usually there should be about 1/2 inch kind of gap from your eyebrows to where the peak of the helmet sits. Anything wider than that, your helmet is actually fitted in correctly. No part of your straps should be touching your ears at all, and it should be snug under your chin, not touching any part of your skin and not kind of nipping your chin either. There should be hardly any movement in your helmet as well. So when you're trying on a helmet, give your head a really forceful kind of shake. I do that with kids that come in and try on helmets. I tell them to do a little dance and shake their heads and what have you. And the minute you see the helmet kind of moving or wobbling, it's too big for you. But again, it boils down to fitting that helmet correctly. A lot of people will put the helmet on and say, yes, this fits, and take it away. What they haven't actually done is adjusted their straps, or maybe it's an adjustable dial at the back of the helmet, adjusted the dial and then determined whether it's a good fit. Sometimes you'll put it on, when you turn the dial, the helmet will rise up, so it's just sitting on your head. That will determine straight away that your helmet is too small. Yeah. So I think it's about your head shape, your head circumference, trying it on, and then determining all three factors together to get the right helmet. And then right at the end, choose the cosmetic side of things. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
All right.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sham. Okay, we can unmute Emma.
Hello. I just had a really quick question about availability of bikes at the moment. I'm just hearing a lot about how everyone's buying bikes, and a lot of bike shops are like kind of running out of supplies. And I just wondered if you had any ideas about whether you found that's the case, and when you think that supply might kind of catch up and that might ease.
Okay, it's very much exactly the way you've just said it. I think due to the pandemic and the fact that the government is now asking people to get on the roads, get on their bikes, get walking, and a lot of people are now very hesitant to get onto the transport, quite rightly, with everything going on and what we've been told. I can give you a very big insight into the bike industry and say that we're all running out of stock. I've actually sold out. I've been reopened for the best part of, I think, 9 days, and I have 3 bikes left. Okay, so what I can tell you is that I've referred a lot of customers online, because online you may get a like-for-like purchase from a bigger online kind of store that can afford to buy these bikes in bulk, unfortunately not like an independent store, and they work out about £60 cheaper, 60 to £80 cheaper. The reason being is that they're not built. They send it to you flat pack in a box. So obviously an independent store will give it to you correctly built, all the bolts checked, etc. So you're still saving money if you buy a like-for-like bike from an online store, then have it kind of delivered to your home address or to a local bike store and get them to build it. You would still be saving money at this time in this climate. However, with everything going on, I can tell you quite clearly as well that the online stores are now run out of stock as well. I have, just to give you an example, I placed an order with my suppliers probably 6 weeks ago. Normally my bikes would come to me within 2 days. My deliveries would come to me within 2 days. So we're talking about an order that was placed 6 weeks ago and I still haven't received it. So what's happened now is with a lot of people obviously buying bikes, more or less the whole of the UK bike industry have run out of stock. So after my delivery, which is expected at the end of this month or possibly in the next 2 weeks, the next shipment of bikes coming into the UK could possibly go into September, October. So that's kind of the reality of what's going on. The suppliers are working very hard with their factories abroad, trying to adhere to the demands and what have you. And I'm hoping that as things are getting a little bit kind of less restricted, that we're going to be able to see the stock coming back into the UK. There's a few brands that I work with that the products are actually made in the UK, so we're quite lucky that way. But like I said, the insight is that we're looking at a clear difficulty in bringing this stock in. I've got a shipment of 50 bikes, and after that I won't get any until November. So that's kind of giving you a bit of an indication as to what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
No.
So I don't think we don't have any more hands up, but one thing I just wanted to ask you to touch on before we finish is it was something that came up in the questions submitted in advance, was about folding bikes. So would you mind just briefly talking about when might you decide to buy a folding bike? Like what kind of things are they good for and what are they not so good for?
Okay. All right, so I think I'll start off with what they're not good for. So if you're going to be doing a cycling ride in a group, I probably wouldn't recommend it. It's not fast enough. It's just not as versatile as a hybrid or a mountain bike, let's say. So I think for group rides, I probably wouldn't recommend it, but if you're used to it and you're comfortable with it and that's the only option you have, it's not a complete no either. Now, with regards to the positives of buying a folding bike, I would say, obviously, you know, if you are commuting, you can fold it, you can take it on the tube, you can take it on the bus, you know, you can store it easily, it's lightweight, you know, dependent on, you know, if you live in a flat and you don't have the space to put a full bike, you know, in storage, then all those factors come in play. I think with folding bikes as well, I think the good thing about folding bikes and the geometry of a folding bike is whether you're a short person or a tall person, the flexibility is there, frame-wise size, so, you know, side of things. So if you're, say, 5'1", you know, a folding bike comes in two frame sizes, not typically two frame sizes, 13 or 14, sorry. And that would suit most heights, you know. So I think the good, you know, that's one way of looking at that with folding bikes is that you've got the flexibility of it kind of accommodating different size or different height people. I think the main one is really that you can store it and you can take it with you. You can put it into your car, you know, transport. So it's quite flexible in that sense. Budget-wise, they start at $250 for a good kind of entry price one. Bromptons are very kind of popular, but a lot of people hesitate because they can be very expensive. So I think a good brand possibly to look for when buying a folding bike would be something like the Viking brand, which has a starting point of about 250 to 280. It's slightly on the heavier side than a Brompton, but obviously you're paying a fraction of the Brompton price. So if that's something that you're looking for, then you know, it's actually a good option. Yeah.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you, Sham. Okay, so I think we will wrap it up then for now. So huge thank you to you, Sham. It's been a really informative, brilliant session. I think everyone would have found it very useful. We're going to be putting up the recording on YouTube as well because we had lots of other people who wanted to join but couldn't make it at the last minute. And we will share the details of A&S Cycles. Do go and check it out, and you can make an appointment to go there if you want to go and speak to Sham in person and ask some more questions about buying a bike or anything else. Also, Cycle Sisters is going to be launched on our website, so if you go to cyclesisters.org.uk, you can check out our new website. There's an option for signing up on there so you can keep up to date with what we're up to and similar events like this. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram as well. And one last thing is that I will be sending out a feedback form, a really short feedback form based on this session. So it would be really great if as many of you could complete it as possible, just to let us know how you found it and any comments or feedback you have that will help us in planning future sessions. So Jazakallah, thank you very much everybody for joining us, and